Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thanks for sharing us this morning, Janine.
My pleasure. You'll have to let me know, Lloyd, what quorum is.
I need to rely on Ruby for that. Ruby, what's a quorum?
Let me look up the number of HSAC members. The quorum is usually half plus one, so we would need 5.
Need 5 members. Tammy Lawrence is a new member, correct?
I am new.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Yay, Tracy.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry for hopping on a couple minutes late. Good to see everybody.
Morning, Drew.
No, it's 12 people total, so that's,
So that's 7.
yeah.
Okay.
And Tammy, you're on policy and planning. Drew is on performance management.
Okay.
Jerome Stevens is on policy and planning too, I believe.
All right. So right now our membership is Danielle, Tracy, and Janine. Is that correct?
And Drew.
And Drew is on this committee. So 4. So we need 3 more. Well, who are the, we know Jonathan's not available. Who else do we have available, might be joining us, Ruby?
Dr. Birch, Shay Kennard, Alicia Thompson, Chris Tunes, Angel Vick Lewis, Shante Addison, Sally Wilson.
Okay. Well, Janine, you're cherry, so you get to decide how you'd like to proceed.
Well, we have some items that we need to vote on.
Right.
And so,
At least 2.
yeah. So I hate to go too far down the agenda without having quorum so that we can vote. But I also really like to start my meetings on time, so.
Right.
I know that we have a number of things on the agenda that I am perfectly, okay with just jumping to, and then we can run back to the approval, because we can't really even approve the minutes without quorum.
Right.
So, you know, we can start the meeting if that's everyone's preference.
Yeah,
Great. Great. Then I'd like to call the meeting to order at 10:05 on Thursday, June 9th, 2022. So we are going to hold off on reviewing and approving the minutes until we have quorum. And we do have an item to address in the minutes that we will need to have a follow-up vote on. However, we do have some information to share, and Lloyd, that's you.
thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks again for chairing our meeting today in our regular chair, Jonathan Kroom's absence. Couple of things regarding the continuum of care application process. We have, as the lead agency, been in consultation with the Durham Housing Authority for some months regarding the Home Again project. This is a project that DHA has been implementing for some years. During the pre-application process, the Durham Housing Authority did not complete the pre-application, indicating that they were intending to renew the project in the 2022 competition. So in light of that, we had email dialogue with them and confirmed with them that they are not planning to seek renewal funding for Home Again in the 2022 competition. So that will make available Home Again's continuum of care funding also for reallocation. That amount is $140,025, which is what the project was renewed for in the 2021 competition. So we're expecting that with those funds plus the DCRC reallocation of $167,147, that we will have $307,172 available for new project funding, that if HUD again places tier 1 funding at the total amount needed for 100% of the renewal amounts, what's called the annual renewal demand, that $307,172 would be available to Durham projects under tier 1. In addition, we're anticipating a permanent housing bonus of some $90,000 to perhaps $95,000, plus a domestic violence bonus project of $140,000 to $150,000. The domestic violence bonus project can, there's two ways the domestic violence bonus projects can be approved by HUD for funding. One is through the domestic violence, specifically the domestic violence bonus competition. And if the project is not awarded funding through that competition, it would still be eligible for funding through the regular continuum of care competition process. Durham has received funding through the domestic violence competitions in 2018 and again in 2021 when the LGBTQ Center applied for funding. So we're hopeful that we will have a domestic violence bonus project to recommend, and that project would be funded especially through the domestic violence bonus competition. The other more informational point I would make around the continuum of care competition is that in addition to some new organizations seeking renewal funding, we do have 3 organizations seeking new project funding. Volunteers of America is planning to apply. based on the pre-application, they're planning to apply for permanent supportive housing funding. Families Moving Forward has indicated through the pre-application that it's interested in applying for the domestic violence bonus funds. And Project Access of Durham County started a pre-application for the continuum of care. It did not complete it. We are continuing to work with them to get Project Access approved for the full COC NOVO competition, and hope that will be accomplished by the end of June. So, but at this point, they are not approved for participation in the full project competition funding. The other renewals besides Home Again have all indicated that they are interested in applying for renewal funding. Housing for New Hope has indicated that they would like to apply for expansion project funding for Andover and William Square. These are two project-based rent assistance projects for permanent supportive housing. And their existing grants are both in the neighborhood of 70,000, and they're interested in increasing the COC grants to approximately $110,000 to $120,000 for each project to provide additional operating support for those projects. Both of them are supporting 20 beds of permanent supportive housing. So we do anticipate, especially if Project Access is approved for a full project application, that we would have some competition for the funds that will be available to Durham during the upcoming 2022 competition.
Lloyd, it looks like we have a question from Tracy.
Yes. Go ahead, Tracy, just unmute and you can ask your question. You're still muted, Tracy. Although the sign went off. You want to type are you typing your question in the chat?
Thank you, Tracy. It looks like Jerome's hand is also up.
Okay. Jerome, you have a question?
Can you hear me?
We hear you now.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm having a little bit of a tough time. I'm on my phone. I left my laptop at home.
Okay.
But my question is, we are a new project, and we need information on how and where to apply for this funding. Now, we haven't been in operation for the some different entities would like to see information of your 3-year budget or profit and loss statement, but we haven't been in operation for that long. Is there an application process, and where do we get those applications from?
Jerome, Cullen, and I are happy to have further dialogue with you offline about the process. At this point, the what I can say, and it's good for other committee members to be aware, is that the pre-application process for the continuing care process has closed. If there's more funding available in the 2022 competition that we learn that we don't have enough organizations interested in applying for all of the funds, we may be able to conduct a supplemental pre-application process, but any organizations that would come into the process at that point would still need to satisfy all of the pre-application requirements that have been in place earlier during the pre-application process that we conducted in the months of April and May. But we'll talk further with you offline.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Lloyd, you also mentioned domestic violence funding.
Correct.
What's happening with those dollars?
Okay. Again, we're anticipating a domestic violence bonus of $140,000 to $150,000 in the pre-application process. Families Moving Forward has indicated interest in applying for those funds to do rapid rehousing for survivors of domestic violence.
Great.
So
Thank
it
you.
would be certainly a worthwhile project, as we know that DCRC's current funded domestic violence bonus project will be ending in 2023, I believe. Yeah,
That's correct.
They received funding. So in the last year's competition, they have had 3 years of funding, and certainly would be a possibility of transitioning people that need continuing rapid rehousing support from the DCRC project to the Families Moving Forward project, assuming that we can line up the project years adequately. But we'll certainly work with DCRC to ensure that people that are in the rapid rehousing project of DCRC are transitioning to other support if they continue to need it after that funding ends.
Great.
Good question.
Go ahead. Thank you. Hey there, I'm sorry about that. I had some audio issues. All of a sudden my volume had a big old X on it. So I apologize for that and had to go ask someone. But just had a quick question, Lloyd. Because we kind of partner with DHA, this is kind of the first I've learned that they're not renewing their Home Again project. Was there any explanation? I know there's a lot of organizational change going on within DHA. Did that contribute to them not submitting an application for their renewal?
I'll defer to Colin on that. I wouldn't want to speculate on exactly why they made that decision. I don't know, Colin, do you want to chime in or refer that to DHA?
I think it's a DHA question. They didn't really provide a reason.
Okay.
I think it's just such a small number of vouchers and a lot of work. It just doesn't make sense for them, but they could give better clarity.
Okay. Well, how will this impact the number of people who are already a part of their program?
So that's a great question. The plan would be that we will work with them over the Home Again program is currently funded through September 30th, 2023. So beginning October 1st, the participants in that program would transition, at least the plan per DHA's last correspondence with us, would be to transition those participants to a regular housing choice voucher.
Okay.
So that the housing choice voucher would pick up the either October 2023 or November 2023 rental payments after they spend out the last year of funding. Obviously,
so-
if there's a participant that's in there that still needs ongoing supportive services, then we would have to look within our continuum of identifying another PSH program to transition the person to, because you can transition somebody from one permanent supportive housing project to another permanent supportive housing project if needs are there. So if there is somebody who still needs supportive services, and we're not able to provide the level of supportive services with a regular housing choice voucher, then we would work with our existing partners to, prioritize that move over maybe a new person to ensure that we don't lose something.
Okay.
the
Because the
individual-
question was, because the
Sorry.
concern is that the number of people who are already on wait list and, again, the supply of affordable housing units, I didn't know how this would impact them in any way of being able to transition from being a part of this program to actually having, it's one thing to have a housing choice voucher, but it's another thing altogether to identify housing that would be able to accept this and then be able to transition into.
So that's a great question, Tracy. So the current DHA voucher holders have already been through, they're basically changing their funding source on the DHA ledger. The folks who are in there most likely will not need to move from their current housing arrangements.
Okay,
It'll just be instead of getting reimbursed from the HUD COC project, DHA will bill HUD through a housing choice voucher instead. So it'll be more of an
Okay.
administrative role. If there's an inspection issue that comes up, then that's a different story. But for the most part, the plan would be just changing a funding source and not necessarily having to move all of those clients from where they currently are, because DHA does not have any project-based units where, it's 15 people in this one apartment and that apartment is no longer going to be paid for it. They would be able to ideally stay exactly where they are, and there won't be a
Okay.
major impact for them.
okay, all right, that would work. I'm just wondering, because again, we partnered with them with that particular project. So this is my first understanding of them not renewing the project. So I think internally we'll have a discussion as it relates to that. And we didn't have like a contractual agreement, but we did have a memorandum of understanding. And so we'll internally work through that to be able to contact them to further discuss how this moves forward.
And some of those participants that you may be providing supportive services to may still qualify for your supportive services and may still need them. So just
Okay.
because you're not tied to that project doesn't mean that Alliance wouldn't be able to continue working with those folks if still needed, assuming they still meet the Medicaid and all the other eligibility requirements that you have.
Yes, I think it's just a matter, we've grown exponentially in the last probably 6 or 7 months from 500 to over 900 people this month. And so internally, we've also reworked how contracts and MOUs are, channeled through. So again, we'll have an internal discussion about that and also talk with DHA as it relates, because you're right, the individuals who we serve will continue to be Medicaid eligible. However, how we communicate and how we resolve this on an MOU side, we'll have to have that in writing. So
Perfect.
and also, Lloyd, you mentioned Project Access was going to possibly be interested in an application. Would that be in relation to the Healthy Housing Pilot or some other project?
We were hoping to perhaps have a healthy housing pilot. I think they are interested in that option. We would be hopeful that we could develop a healthy housing pilot for Durham, but that remains to be seen.
So to clarify a few things, Tracy, I think you're referring specifically to the healthy housing pilot with Duke, correct? Yeah, this would not be specific to that project. My understanding is that this would be a new project, but it would be a healthcare housing partnership, which I think is what Lloyd is referencing.
Would it resemble
Right.
something like a respite type of housing?
No,
setting?
they are looking at permanent supportive housing,
Okay,
just with a medical partnership, because that is something that HUD is looking for. But that, I think that healthy housing partnership specifically that you're referring to, it's just been too hard to bring such a large entity kind of along in that process. And they've tried in the past and I think not been successful. So I think they're looking at doing something separate from that project. I also wanted to go back just to clarify for the committee about the way Home Again is operating, because there was a statement that anyone who still needs supportive services could be transferred. So just to clarify for the rest of the committee, the only clients who are receiving supportive services in that project are eligible for Alliance services separate from the project. There are no additional supportive services being provided in the Home Again project at this point. So anyone who's eligible for Alliance services, like was said, could continue on, but everyone else has no additional supportive services and are maintaining their housing on their own. So the transition from Home Again to voucher should be very smooth because it's essentially the same as what the clients are receiving now.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Did you have more to share with us, Lloyd?
Not regarding the COC competition. I know we talked in preparation for the meeting about a final approval of the COC new project evaluation scorecard.
We do need to review the minutes and give that vote. Do we have a quorum though? Ruby?
We are still at 6 people. Yeah, we're still at 6.
So are we able to review the minutes and then have a vote outside of the meeting?
We can punt and approve them at the next meeting when we do have a quorum.
Because we
That's
have
that's what we'd have to do for any decisions that need to be made. If we don't have a quorum, we would just have to punt them to, I guess, the August meeting at this point.
How does that impact our permanent supportive housing projects, Lloyd?
I don't know. We don't have an official HSAC parliamentarian like the Congress does, but
if we have something that we have to get passed before the June, do we have a vote that needs to be, do we have something we have to vote on?
Well, there's two issues. One is that the committee provisionally approved the new project, the COC new project application scorecard at the last meeting, based on what the HSAC did at the May meeting. And there's a question as to whether the committee needs to finalize approval of that scorecard, or whether we can take the vote that the committee did in May as final approval of the scorecard.
Were there any changes?
Oh,
There isn't an HSAC meeting this month. The next one's in July.
No, we have a meeting in June.
We do have a meeting scheduled for June. Okay, I thought
Mhm.
we were skipping June and going into July.
No,
Okay.
we skipped July. We don't have a meeting in July. So
Okay.
that's what I was trying to figure out, is if we have anything that the committee needs to approve to take to HSAC at the June meeting, if we have something that needs to be approved by the HSAC in June due to other timelines, we could just, well, Shay just joined. So are we?
Shay was already on.
Oh, sorry, Shay. I didn't know. I missed it. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
If we had something that we need to get approved, I would suggest send it out to the full committee for an email vote.
Yeah.
That may be the best you can do at this point, because you don't have a quorum, but you don't really have a quorum to approve sending it out for an email vote. So
Right. I
Uh,
think that's the
you're kinda
quandary
stuck in
because
that?
we have to have the scorecard approved if we're going to score the applications, right, Lloyd?
You do not need a
Correct.
quorum to make the decision to send something out for an email vote. That's something we frequently do. Just to clarify that piece. So if a vote is needed, you can send it out via email vote. That's just a chair decision, which I believe right now is you, Janine.
Great. So has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from our May meeting? It's at the very beginning
Yes.
is the provisional conditional vote that we all agreed on. HSAC voted in May. I believe they voted in favor of this funding. So now we need to go back and kind of shore that vote up. If we can have that become an email vote so that we can have the quorum of votes that we need to proceed with the scorecard over the summer, because I don't really think we can punt it to August at this point. Then what would you like to do, Lloyd, about the permanent supportive housing projects? Does that need to be voted on today, or do we need to wait? Because members can go back and watch the recording as well.
The so the scorecard can be approved in an email vote,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
For the COC competition, we do not need any additional action by the committee.
Okay.
The domestic violence bonus and the priority for the 2022 competition has been established as dedicated plus projects.
Okay.
It's permanent supportive housing. There is one more item that I was hoping the committee would take action on, and that is making a recommendation to the HSAC to approve this the proposal to do cross COC housing first evaluations, and that proposal was sent out to the committee earlier this week. I believe that the committee members who are present could send it to the HSAC for the HSAC consideration without a formal approval by the committee. But again, I defer to the parliamentarian among us, who I think at this point is Hanaleo, in terms of what can be done. I think the HSAC can consider things from the committees without a full recommendation, and HSAC could be informed that it's coming without a recommendation because the committee did not have a quorum at this meeting.
Yeah, Lloyd, that could be done. I think my recommendation is that those recommendations I think are important. I would suggest that this committee without a quorum could take a provisional vote, and then ask for those members who are absent to add their votes via email. That way people who are here don't have to email again. That would be my suggestion, just because I think that those recommendations do hold weight at HSAC. But yes, it's true that technically, while this committee is supposed to make those recommendations to HSAC, there's nothing prohibiting HSAC from reviewing something that doesn't have a formal recommendation.
Okay, so at this point, I think we've made a decision to at least have an email vote on the COC new project application scoring tool, correct, Janine?
Correct.
Okay. So then staff will manage that process, I believe. Is that the way that works, Hanalea?
That's correct. We
Remote.
normally, I think that there's an outstanding question as to whether people here want to vote, so they don't have to then email their votes, but that's up to y'all to decide how you want to do that. But yeah, we would normally, I believe it's normally staff who would send that out for a vote, yeah.
So would we like to have a vote now for those who are here and then just send the votes out to those who are not?
Yeah, I would agree to do that.
Great. So for all those in favor of amending our conditional vote to be an actual approval of the scorecard, please put your yay or nay in the chat, please. Guess I should do that as well. And those who are not here, we will send out an email vote to. Now, as far as the proposal of the cross COC evaluation, do you have information that you'd like to share with us, Lloyd?
Yes, let me share my screen and I'll hopefully talk through the proposal. The background for this to begin with is that for at least 3 years, we have been including a portion of the Housing First Standards Assessment tool in our annual evaluation of the COC funded projects by asking the evaluation committee to review the policies and procedures of projects and the intake documents of projects to see how well the policies and procedures and intakes are at least documenting that projects are implementing Housing First standards. Hopefully you can see my screen. Can you acknowledge that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Now it's a little larger.
Thank you.
So there are 2 other aspects of the Housing First assessment tool, which are having dialogue with the people, the staff who are implementing projects to see whether they have kind of incorporated Housing First approaches into the way they operate and how they talk about their project, as well as an evaluation of how well the project is actually doing it. So the Housing First assessment tool talks about, does the project say it? Does it document it? Does it do it? That is, does it say it's doing Housing First? Do the policies and procedures document that Housing First standards are part of the project? And do we have some evidence that Housing First is actually being done in this project? So aware that we were only really doing one of the 3 aspects of the Housing First assessment tool, I actually initially, after the spring assessment that the committee, subcommittee of this committee did, had some dialogue about how we could do more to evaluate whether projects are saying it and then actually doing it. And I had an informal conversation with a staff member at one of our projects, and talked about, well, could we develop teams within the COC to have organizational teams visit one another? For example, to have urban ministries evaluate the projects of Housing for New Hope, and a team from Alliance, for example, evaluating the DCRC project, for example. And that conversation, when I had it to the person I spoke to suggested, well, doing it across within the COC would perhaps be challenging because the urban ministries team might come to Housing for New Hope, for example, and say, well, we don't want to be evaluated too strictly in our own implementation, so we're not going to evaluate Housing for New Hope too strictly. So that's really what led to question, particularly question number 3 that is currently up on the screen, around why we've developed a proposal to do it across Wake County, or the Raleigh-Wake COC, and Orange County and Durham. And so the idea is that sending teams across COC boundaries would improve the impartiality and the objectiveness of the Housing First evaluation. And so the proposal is simply that teams of at least 3 people from one triangle COC would evaluate the implementation of Housing First standards in an organization receiving COC funds in a neighboring COC. I use kind of an FAQ, frequently asked questions format, to provide some background and rationale for the proposal. I think we believe our team within the department has talked about it, and really the proposal is coming from the team insofar as we've approved moving forward and making the recommendation to the performance management that we pursue this. We have reached out to Orange County, to the COC lead agency staff in Orange County, as well as the director of the Raleigh-Wake Partnership, which is the COC lead in Wake County, and they too are interested in getting their boards to sign off on this. And if we get all 3 COC boards to approve it, we can begin moving forward with a process as described under question 6 that we would work. There's potential. There's I think in Durham, I think the organizations that would be particularly interested in participating would be Housing for New Hope, Alliance Behavioral Health, and Urban Ministries. Assuming that since DCRC and Durham Housing Authority are reallocating their existing projects, that they potentially would not necessarily be interested in participating in this evaluation. We could invite the LGBTQ Center, which has a new COC funded rapid rehousing project that it's just beginning to implement. Certainly their project would not be evaluated at the beginning of this evaluation, but they could participate in evaluating an organization and a project in a neighboring COC, or participate at least with 1 or 2 people. And I think there'd be value in having at least 1 or 2 people from the LGBTQ Center participating in the evaluation process, so that they could perhaps learn from how Housing First is being implemented in another project in a neighboring COC.
Lloyd?
Yes.
It looks like Tracy's hand is up.
Great. I'm glad there are questions.
Hey, I think this is a great way to, the evaluation that HUD has established provides a good overview of, whether or not you document it, you say it, or you practice it is really good. But how would that actually be evaluated across the different continuums of housing efforts, from emergency shelter, transitional rapid rehousing, to permanent supportive housing? Would those standards be the same in terms of evaluating those projects on site? And, you know, is there something else you're looking at to quantify or use qualitative data to determine whether or not the agencies are actually doing this beyond theory to actual practice?
Yeah, great question. Initially, we're kind of seeing this first year as something of a pilot to see how it works. The Housing First Standards Assessment tool, I think, specifically references especially permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing projects. So it would not be an assessment tool that would be used with emergency shelters or transitional housing. And in this first year, we would focus on COC funded projects only. There are several, I think Wake County has, I think 5 or 6 organizations that do have COC grants that could be invited to participate. And Orange County has, I believe, 3, and we would have, again, 3 or 4 in Durham that could participate. So while question 6A mentions our goal of having at least 6 teams, there's the potential for more teams if we get more organizations and can do more work to form the teams and get more interest. We're hoping we do have interest. We're going to try to gently twist some arms to make this happen. But as I mentioned there as well in 6A, that potential team members could come from the COC funded organizations themselves, their staff, board members, perhaps other volunteers who might be interested. The COC board, this committee itself, if some of you might be interested in serving on a committee. We're thinking it's going to take 8 to 10 hours, as we talked about later in the FAQ. COC lead agency staff, and we may put out a general invitation for COC members as well to participate on a team. So if we can form, several teams, I hope we would form perhaps 3 to 5 teams from Durham, and have a need for that many teams to come in from other outlying, from the neighboring COCs to evaluate each of our projects. The idea is that obviously we can't bring an evaluation team into a particular organization without the consent of the organization. So if, for example, if Alliance's DASH project is going to be evaluated in this process, obviously you and Ann and perhaps your CEO, Rob Robinson, needs to give approval for the process. So in terms of the process itself, again, the evaluation of documenting it would be somewhat similar to what we have been doing in Durham, which is simply getting the policies and procedures and intake forms, and having the evaluation team look at how well those documents describe the Housing First standards. The evaluation of how well it's actually being done would be more of a qualitative evaluation, insofar as under 6G2, we're suggesting that, unless if you guys have other ideas as to how we can evaluate whether Housing First is actually being done, we're suggesting that we ask the organizations to develop a focus group of maybe 5 or 6 project participants who would meet with the evaluation team, even if only virtually, to have a dialogue with the evaluation team around some of the key ideas around what constitutes Housing First, and whether participants can really testify that, yeah, housing first is really being implemented in this project in the way it is set up, so that it would be, again, not just the staff or the organizational leadership saying that, yeah, we're doing housing first, but we have some evidence from project participants. There are some things in, we do get annual performance reports from the HMIS as to what happens with project participants throughout their time in a project, but I don't sense that there's much in the APR that would really document whether housing first is actually being implemented within a project after people are admitted to it.
Lloyd,
Yes,
it looks like Shay has a question for us.
good, thank you.
Yes, I was just wondering, is there any point that we check with the other cities, like say Raleigh, to see what their scorecard looks like for their people in their area? Like, do we ever have a meeting with the other areas to see, if we're in alignment with their same scorecard, or kind of understand what best practices and lessons learned are?
So it's a great question in terms of the broader performance evaluation scorecard or the new project application scorecard that you just voted on. We have not been doing that for this particular process and this proposal. There is agreement that the 3 COCs would all use the Housing for Standards assessment tool. If you've participated in our Durham evaluations, you have perhaps some familiarity with that tool. If you go into the document that we forwarded to the committee, these Housing for Standards assessment tool that my cursor is hovering over, those are active links, and you can go into this tool. And again, this tool is being used. I think our colleague in Raleigh, Kim Crawford, mentioned that she had been out to Salt Lake City earlier in the year and noted that the Salt Lake City COC is using this HUD recommended Housing for Standards assessment tool as part of their evaluation of projects. Does that address your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Lord, I had a follow-up question. What is the time frame that you're proposing to get this done?
Great question. We are looking to get this approved in the next couple of months by each of the 3 COCs. We would then begin working to get interested volunteers in the third quarter and begin the process of preparing the teams, forming the teams, making assignments into the latter part of 2022, and would hope to get the evaluations done by the end of the first quarter of 2023, so by the end of March. One question that this committee would need to consider, and it's not referenced strongly in this document because this document is being used by all three COCs in terms of our communications with the COC boards, but I think our hope would be that we would incorporate the scoring of projects into the first semi-annual evaluation of COC funded projects in 2023. And we would be recommending that also that we incentivize our organizations in Durham to participate in this process by giving them, for example, 5 or 10 bonus points in at least the first semi-annual evaluation, if not both evaluations of our projects next year, if they do participate in this process. And again, the vision is that participation is twofold. It is, one, having your organization and project or projects evaluated by an outside visiting team, and also that you are providing volunteer staff and or others to also serve on a team to visit another organization and project in a neighboring COC.
Well, that is excellent. Excellent information. Does everyone have their questions answered, or is there more discussion that we need to have? Are we ready to have a vote on this? It looks like we have quorum.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. So if we decide to participate and everybody agrees across the COCs decide to participate, we will get to choose the teams and the areas in which we go to evaluate a certain COC.
Great question. Teams in Durham would be assigned to evaluate a project and organization outside of Durham, and there would be random assignments. So it would not be, again, we want to try to create a sense of impartiality. And so we'll need to do some work. I think our initial vision in terms of forming teams is that teams would be kind of from within one organization. But if a team, for example, if Janine, for example, wants to participate in a team and she's the only person from she's not affiliated with any particular COC funded project organization in Durham, we might, assign her to a team with you, Shanta, and maybe one other person from Housing for New Hope to evaluate a project in Wake County, for example. But the teams would not be able to choose necessarily which organization and project they are evaluating. That would be done more randomly. We're envisioning some kind of random drawing. Not that we would have a televised drawing necessarily, but certainly random, so that we want to try to make it as impartial and objective as we can.
Lord, I had a quick question as well. Did you mention that you would also include participants of programs as a part of the overall evaluations?
Well, that's a great question. It's not specifically referenced, I would say, in the FAQ, but if you had a DASH participant or two who wanted to participate in being a member of the team, I think that is a worthwhile suggestion, insofar as HUD is really encouraging us to incorporate people with lived experience into our COC processes. So that would certainly be a very viable option.
Well, I didn't know whether or not the site visit would include, or the process would include talking with a participant of one of the, rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing projects as a part of the evaluation. And if so, would you have to have something in terms of a consent in writing before proceeding with that?
Yes, that is the intent under 6G2, that a dialogue with focus group of project participants, to which the evaluation team would seek to determine how well the standards are actually being implemented. So that is part of the process. I think, probably need to think further about, for example, a project participant from DASH serving on an evaluation team, evaluating a project in a neighboring COC, and then that same participant coming back and being part of a focus group. I think that might create some challenges, not necessarily conflicts of interest, but it could create some disparities between their awareness of what we're evaluating and how that process goes. Again, depending on when they would do when those focus groups conversations would happen. So that
Lloyd,
That's why I was just wondering whether or not they would be included on the front end in terms of training and understanding the overall scope of what you're doing, because oftentimes we, while I think there is value added in individuals participating in this type of process because they do have lived experiences, but there's sometimes a gap between knowing different processes and programs and how this actually, impacts a program overall in terms of evaluating, making sure, we're all practicing the same thing and that we're being consistent across the COC. So I'm just wondering, again, have you kind of walked through all the different pieces of this in terms of, getting, we probably have our ROIs on each of them, but I'm thinking in terms of consent and being able to understand this overall assessment process.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I don't think we've thought about involving people with lived experience in the assessment process itself beyond being part of a focus group to under 6G2 to evaluate how well the project is actually implementing Housing First standards. But if they were to be part of an evaluation team themselves, that would be some additional complexity. And I don't know if you or other members of the committee have additional thoughts on that point, whether we should potentially open it up in that way to people with lived experience. I think it's a worthwhile suggestion.
I see pros and cons on both sides of this, but I mean, I also understand that some of our program participants, I think they may be capable of being involved and engaged in this process, but there also may be some limitations in terms of, just overall understanding the overall, the broader scope of this, simply because there is a lack of education among many of our participants who have not graduated from high school and are not capable of understanding.
Is just hanging out with the board.
So
yeah,
it's just sharing what's been. I think they say we want to hear what's going on. We want to hear what's going on outside of board meetings. My plan is to just show up. If you have a story,
Drew, are you having a conversation outside of the committee?
I wasn't, so sorry. I just muted myself.
All right.
We do have a question, Lloyd.
Yes.
I believe it's Shanta.
Shantae, it's okay.
Shantae, thank you. I really appreciate that.
No, it's okay. I do have a question. So if the teams are randomly, now this would be voluntary if you decide to join a team, correct?
Correct.
I would have some concern. I'm not sure this is the appropriate venue, but I would have some concerns because I would like to participate. I know that I would not be able to participate on a team, probably evaluating Raleigh-Wake partnership. I mean, not partnership, but Raleigh-Wake COC because of past affiliation. But would that be a cause, like a conflict of interest if like there were past affiliations, recent past affiliations?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, again, to clarify, I mean, I think our thinking would be that ideally a team of 3 could be formed within Housing for New Hope. And if there are specific organizations within Wake County that because of your past affiliations, you do not feel it would be appropriate for you to do a site visit to, you could let us know that, and we would choose another organization. Now, if your past affiliations and work in Wake County is such that we need to make sure that your team is assigned to a team or to an organization in Orange County. I think all things being equal at this point, my thinking would be, well, hopefully that's an exception, not the rule, and that we could make those kind of adjustments for your team. Obviously, if that's common, and we have 4 or 5 teams from Durham all saying we can't evaluate projects and organizations in Wake County, well then Orange County does not have nearly as many organizations receiving COC funding as Wake, so that would be a challenge. But and I would say too that we're saying that a team needs to be at least 3 people. Teams could be larger. I think could say 3 to 5 people. I don't think would recommend a team of more than about 5 people. But
okay, I just wanted to make sure there was some flexibility there because I think this is a great idea and I would like to participate.
Great. Well, we certainly hope that Housing for New Hope with 6 COC funded projects that we're counting on Housing for New Hope forming a team.
So Lloyd, I do believe that this particular item needs a vote.
Yes.
So I just want to put it out there. Have we had sufficient discussion about this item for us to feel comfortable making a motion to approve?
And again, the motion to approve would be to forward it to the COC board, the HSAC, for its final approval. But certainly
understood. Yeah, understood.
Certainly with the approval of performance management.
I'll make
Do
that
you
motion.
see it? Well, I was going to ask a clarification question. Is there a conflict of interest, or should we recuse ourselves from voting even though we're funded through a project, or does it matter because we're a part of the subcommittee?
I don't see a conflict of interest. I don't know if other members of the homeless team do.
I don't see a conflict of interest because you're not talking about awarding, you're talking about how do we evaluate stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just didn't know whether or not, there are other funded projects on here as well, and we would be evaluating not only, I think, our own projects, but projects within our region. So I didn't know whether or not that would pose any type of making just sure the waters are clear. That's all.
Sure. Good question.
Well, and the other piece is, since you have a project, you may be monitoring a similar project in a different jurisdiction if you volunteered to be on the committee, which wouldn't be a conflict of interest and may provide a learning opportunity or something else to see what other people are doing and how they make it work.
Sure. Okay. All right.
So is someone interested in making a motion? To approve this?
I'll motion to approve.
Thank you, Shantae.
I'll
This is-
second.
And that was, I'm sorry. Who seconded?
Shay Kennard. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So then we put it out for everyone to say yay or nay. If they would like to move forward with this proposal. Great. Looks like motion carries unanimously.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Excellent. So now that we have a quorum, we kind of need to go all the way back to the beginning of our agenda and review the minutes. I'm sure all of you have at this point, but we need a motion to approve the minutes for our May meeting. Is someone able to make that motion?
A motion.
Thank you, Danielle. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Shay. Is everyone else in agreement to approve these minutes? Please say so in the chat. Great, moved unanimously as well. So at this point, we actually are at the point of adjournment, 20 minutes early. Unless anyone else has something that they want to bring forward, an announcement, anything that they would like to share overall with the committee, please say so now.
Madam Chair, do I understand that we're moving forward then with an email vote on the evaluation tool for COC new projects?
Well, I guess we
Okay.
could, I'll leave that. I'm going to ask Hanalea. Now that we have quorum, do we just want to make the vote and move forward, or do we want to continue with an email vote?
Yeah, I was gonna recommend that you just get a vote from the final person who joined so that you can
Okay.
see that quorum.
So I think that is Chris Tones, and the vote was really about making it official about the funding for a dedicated plus project. We had been waiting on the HSAC vote for the May meeting of the HSAC vote. It was approved, and now we're coming back to officially vote to approve that recommendation.
Okay, thanks, Janine. So it would just be approving that, like me voting whether I approve that or not?
Yes.
Is that the
Yeah.
question? Yes, I would like to say yay to that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That also passes unanimously. Thank you, Chris. So, any other items? Lloyd, Hanalea, Colin?
Good.
Any of our members? Fantastic. I guess we're going to give you 18 minutes of your life back and your morning.
Are we clear on the committee not meeting in July and picking up again in August? Is that I think all the committees take a break for July.
Great. I'll ask that be included in the minutes very clearly, Lloyd. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Fantastic, Shay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Great, Chris. I appreciate that. We are so adjourned. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Have
Thanks,
a good day.
everybody. Enjoy the day.
Good one.
Bye-bye.